Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Super excited today to have Stacy Johns with us. She is the Chief Operating Officer of the Los Angeles Football Club, LAFC, also president of the Board of Directors of Grasshopper Club Zurich, and former VP of Finance and Human Resources of the Indianapolis Colts. Stacy, super excited to have you on the show today.
So excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe let's start as I do with most guests with your origin story. So kind of comic book like version one, like tell us who you are and how you got to be what you're doing right now.
Sure. It's funny. I almost always get asked this question when I go speak at whether it's colleges or career fairs or whatever I'm doing. And a lot of young people, sitting and listening in the audience are kids who know exactly what they want to do. That was not me. So if you look back to what I have thought, 30 years ago that I'd be sitting in this seat or this is what I wanted to do, I really had no idea. I loved math. I liked engineering, physics, like all these interesting things, but I decided I wasn't sure what I would do with some of those things. And my dad was like, "Oh, like you should try business, you should try finance accounting, you can use some of those skills." And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" And so I went into school pretty open-minded about not knowing what I was going to do. And then once I got into the path, it's like, "Oh, you do public accounting. That's what you do when you're like that's where you go." And especially if you don't know what you want to do, you can see all these industries, like kind of experience life. So fast forward to junior year, I'm a full-time intern at Ernst& Young.
Okay.
And I'm sitting at my desk on a Saturday afternoon, and my manager's like, "Hey, do you want to work tomorrow?" Which is Sunday. You public accounting busy season, you're working like I've already worked 70 hours or something. It's like not really, but sure. Like my dad's ringing in my ear, like, "Don't pass up opportunities, Stacy." So I said, sure. They gave me a map quest back then. There's no GPS or anything.
Hmm.
Here's where you go tomorrow. And it was to the Indianapolis Colts training center. And so that was like my first experience of wow, I've always enjoyed playing sports. I love watching sports and consuming sports. I didn't think about like finance and accounting business could marry up with sports and be this really cool thing. And I got to know the CFO like that first day. They were doing construction. There was like nowhere to sit. So we're sitting in a conference room on a floor with CFO and like, I mean, all of us together.
Uh-huh.
And then, 5 years later, I'm full time at Eli Lilly, and he calls me. I've been on that job and gotten to know more people at the Colts over the years. And he's like, "My controller just walked out. I want you to come work for me." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me," because I kind of just decided that if I want to live in Indianapolis, where my family was, there's only a couple roles, and like probably not like fortunate enough that, and who would leave the job, like whatever. And yeah, it worked out. And so I was on a path to like go back to school actually and like, maybe get an MBA, like do something like that. And I was like, well, I'm going to give all this up for now and I have to try out the sports thing. And it's sort of like the rest is history. From there, I fell in love with the business and I'm a really curious person. And so like how I got from just being an accountant to here was just asking tons of questions, offering to help. We were building Lucas Oil Stadium when I first got there.
Uh-huh.
So I, worked with the Larry Hall, the ticketing guy there at the time, and he was like open to having any help possible, as everyone is when you're opening a building. And I learned how to do ticketing, how to do pricing, how to do the manifest, moving from one building to another. So all this really cool stuff that when I was doing it at the time, it was just interesting and fun. And I had no idea like, oh, I'm going to use this one day to know how to run a ticket sales business. But
Uh-huh.
little did I know that's what I was doing. And, fast forward a couple more years, we need an HR person. I'd never done HR. They're like, we'll send you back to doing some classes, teach you this, that, and the other. So end up taking on HR officially. And then the last 5 years I was there, I started the business data analytics department,
Okay.
which was when I really like learned the most about the sales department, the corporate sales and development, and including, ticket sales, and really built that other side of like my skill set, and it was just so fun to create something new, do something new. And it was very exciting. We went from being a team that was way behind in analytics to a team that really was in a pretty good place. So, and then COVID hit, and I
Uh,
decided um, maybe I wanted to not work at the same place for the rest of my life, which I was sort of headed on a path to becoming the CFO there and, taking that over. And it would have been my hometown team. I think it would have been really hard to ever leave it.
yeah.
And I got this opportunity to come be the CFO here. So it wasn't the COO first, it was the CFO, but still overseeing some other things, HR and things like that. And I was like, never left Indiana before. Never knew much, didn't know much about soccer, to be honest.
Mhm.
But I'd heard a lot of really cool things about LAFC and the brand that they had created and the culture and environment that they had, cultivated. And the idea of starting a sports team and sort of fixing some of the things that are broken with sports like culture
Sure.
like was really cool to me. So coming in still really new. They'd only been playing a couple years when I came in. Was really exciting to me. And also like coming to LA where it's like one of the sports capitals of the world. It's hard to argue
Right.
that. 13 professional sports teams and all the other things that you can do here. So it's like a very crowded market, but it was a very exciting opportunity to go from like a small market, mid market to like a huge market. And I thought if it didn't work out, I'd have all these other opportunities out here. But it turned out to be like a really, really great decision. We've gone from just like a domestic soccer club to owning a couple global football clubs, really expanding my horizon of like what could I do one day? What do I want to do one day? And it's just been the most like the last 4.5 years has been like the most amazing journey.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So
So how did the LAFC, how'd that opportunity come to you?
yeah, so that was interesting too, because of my HR connections with recruiters. Usually they call me to get like, hey, do you know somebody for this role? Because I hadn't gone out and said I want to look for a role. People thought I wanted to stay in Indianapolis forever because that's what I
Sure.
thought. I mean, I had this goal. I was the first female VP there. I
Okay.
wanted to be the first C-level person.
Uh-huh.
That's a woman. I actually don't think there still is that there. So that was like, really what I was gunning for. So people didn't call me for roles ever. And I got this call from a woman who have become friends with a bit. And, I had shared while sharing things for my own searches that we were doing together, or like searches she was doing where we just like were chitty chatting. I had shared some of my frustrations, and how, I really would like to do more, but I was probably only going to always be pigeonholed into finance because they really liked me in that role there. Not like they didn't see me as anything else. I think they just were like really comfortable. She's been here for 15. I mean, she's been here forever. Like the
Hmm.
family's good. We're going to keep her in finance. So I felt like that was my only opportunity. And really, I mean, football, NFL football is getting better, but it was a huge boys club. So I've been
Sure.
fighting, fighting, fighting for years, and I was kind of tired. And so she knows all these things about me. And so she calls me one day and she's like, "I have this role." And I was like, "Okay." Like, and she's like, "But I think it's for you." And I'm like, like, "Okay, like humor me. I'll listen." I mean, it was like 2 or 3 weeks into COVID. So, I mean, it was just a crazy time to get a phone call like this.
Sure.
And then she starts telling me about it. And then she says in Los Angeles. I'm like, Carolyn, like I've never been to California. Like never. Like literally, I'm a like small town Indiana girl at some level. Never been, like the idea of it in some ways, but I'm thinking my family would tell me to go fly kite. Like, and I'm also just like, I don't know, And then she's like, just look at it. She's like, we talked to them once. And during COVID, this is the beauty, is like you're not in the office, so nobody
Right.
knows you're talking to people. So it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
like what's the harm in taking one conversation with like a president of another company? And if anything, I'll learn something from him, right?
Right.
So I take the call and I get really excited about the brand and the culture they've created and the idea that they looked at me and they're like, we want a woman. Half of our fans are female.
Uh-huh.
Our boardroom has no women. Our C-suite has no women. And like with all of your depth and breadth of experience, like there's room for you to grow here. And like those were words that like spoke
Huh.
to me pretty quickly. And so I went to my husband at the time and not my kids. Yeah, I have 3 kids. They were a little bit younger.
Okay.
And I said, "Is this crazy? Would you do it?" Because he's a salesperson, right? So he can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And he kind of always wanted to get out of Indiana. We kind of talked about it, but never like, my kids were like 7, 13, 15 at the
Okay.
time.
Hmm.
So hard time to pick them up and like run them across the
Absolutely.
country,
Yes.
especially during a global pandemic that we had never experienced. So
Right.
it's kind of just a wild situation. But he was like, "Why not? If no other time, like the world's weird and the kids have like no, they're like, pulled away from their friends. Like
Yeah.
one's about to start high school. She could start a new high school, which would be hard, but one high school here." I was like, "All right." So like I keep the process going. And then I had said to Carolyn, I'm like, I have to go visit. I realize it's COVID and all this weird stuff, but I've never been there. Like I need to go see it before I say yes to this. Turns out like COVID just gets worse. George Floyd happens. All these things
Yeah.
happen. And the world is just like shut down. And like the people at LAFC are like, you can't come to California. Like it's just not, it's not happening. So will you do it like sight unseen? And so I did like a million Zoom calls, like to feel comfortable. But yeah, so I took the job on Zoom, which was just
Wow.
crazy. So I'd never been to California, which I didn't tell them that. The recruiter knew that, but they didn't know that. And then when I landed the first, so I took the job And then some other wild things happened because the president left. Like he started Tom Pence started his own company. So
Okay.
before I start, there's a new president. I have a new boss. It's like just all the wildest, weirdest things. So I land like Labor Day weekend of COVID in LA for the first time in my life. I go straight to the stadium to meet my boss, who wasn't my boss before, but is my boss now. And I got there and we walked toward the stadium and I like the stadium is amazing. So I'm like, okay, I've made like the most amazing decision. Like, this is gonna be great.
Yeah.
We get done and I tell him like this is the first time I've ever been here and he like dies. And I'm like, it's trust me, like I'm good at this, I'm gonna be fine, but like and I'll learn. I'm a quick learner. But he was just like then he was like shocked. Like he was already shocked. Like going from the NFL to MLS was like people thought that was crazy.
Uh-huh.
Because the Colts were like, if you stay, we'll make you the CFO, which is like my dream
Yeah.
theoretically. But it sort of had stopped becoming my dream when I had this idea that I could do something different and new, and I didn't think for 30 years I could do the same thing and all of this. So yeah, it was a big change, but I really love the idea. MLS is much younger, much more willing to change, willing to take, they have to take risks. Like otherwise they're just not going anywhere. I
Hmm.
mean, still to this day, that's true. So the established NFL was a great way to learn, but like taking that to MLS and being able to take more risks and have more autonomy and do more things was like it was a cool idea and it's been a fun adventure. So yeah, it was wild.
That is
I tell
wild.
that I tell the story all the time to young people about like taking it was a calculated risk. I mean, it was
Uh-huh.
a great job in a great market. But I mean, it was a huge like risk. I was working in a very established role at an
Sure.
established club with no risk, essentially. I could have stayed there for the rest of my life and
Yeah.
had a great career, but I chose to do something different. And then when you look at it, I'd always wanted to like sort of do a little bit more than finance. And I kind of done that with HR, but I really was going to get pigeonholed into that administrative side. And now it's like I'm overseeing revenue and I'm overseeing, stadium operations and I'm, hopefully on a path to like run a club one day, which is not the
Yeah.
path I was on before. And had I not taken a giant leap of faith in myself and, just kind of taking my whole family on an adventure, like we all wouldn't be where we are today. And I think if you ask any of my kids, and I got a ton of advice from other parents about how the best kids, the most adjusted kids in life are the kids that understand how to deal with change.
Sure.
And kids that like live in the same city, in the same high school, in the same like forever, like really don't adapt. They don't have to adapt. They're just always. So I think my kids would tell you like it was hard at first and we threw a lot of things at them. But
Uh-huh.
my oldest daughter's in college now,
Okay.
for aerospace engineering
Wow.
and at UW totally like I would have expected her to be like a girl that like probably went to the college I went to in Indiana. I mean, she would have, I think, been a very safe person had she not experienced like what it was like to take a giant risk and do something new. And because of that, I think it like, opened up her mind to, what can I do? My other daughter is like 16, aspiring ballerina and
Oh
has
my word.
studied and she didn't start that till she got here. And
Really?
she studied at like ABT in New York last summer and San Francisco Ballet the summer before. So
Jeez.
my daughter's, and I have a son who's young, so he's 12. So he's like
Uh-huh.
doing it, he's like living his best life in California because
I'm
it's like
sure.
always nice and he can play sports all the time. But
Yeah.
the girls really took the opportunity to like change their life and mindset and like what can we do with ourselves that we couldn't do in Indiana and how are we going to do that now? So it's been really cool to watch that for the whole family actually.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah.
How about before you start recording, you were talking about this Austria team. Maybe share a little bit about that story. That was
Yeah,
super
sure.
interesting.
Yeah. So, one of my other roles in life is managing director of our fourth division club in Innsbruck, Austria, FC Wacker. We started, I think, gosh, it was like 2022. We started this idea that we were going to potentially work with FC Bayern Munich to create this player network. And to do that, we had to get, a European club in our network. And we started like scouring all these smaller clubs. We wanted a first division team
Uh-huh.
initially, but we really were struggling to find the right fit. And then we found this team who had gone into insolvency. So they were a first division club. They got they got demoted. They got several times for or relegated several times for insolvency and financial issues, so not sporting
Okay.
issues.
Really?
So
Okay.
they're this historic club with this amazing brand with this great fan base, but they have been burned by some bad leadership and bad management and mismanagement that has taken their club all the way down to the fourth division by the time we start getting involved with them. And and getting to ownership was like a real struggle to start, and it took us much longer than we expected. By the time we got a hold of like control-ish, it was late in the season, and they were a couple of games from getting relegated. And we tried to do a couple things, but it was sort of foregone. So we thought we were buying a fourth division club, and we ended up buying a fifth division club, and then straight into the next year had to you know, get the right people in and really turn the thing around. And a lot of that, though, I mean, the people that are there, it's so fun to go there. There's so much passion for this club. So many people that are there, and if you've watched like Wrexham, people have seen this.
Uh-huh.
The volunteers that come out that nobody is paying any money to, that just want to be associated with the club,
Yes.
is actually crazy when you think about how Americans work. And Americans here wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to go work the F&B beer stand during the games for fun because I love my club and I just want
Right.
to give
Yes.
back. Nobody does that here. Like, so watching that is just amazing. And then you have these kids. There's a lot of colleges in Innsbruck, so you have a lot of young, talented, like creative kids who are also who love football, love global football.
Hmm.
And so they come out, and I mean, our content creators and our social people, I mean, most of them are not paid and just love what they do, and they create the coolest stuff. And then it's more, I don't know if it's more genuine, but it's pretty genuine because coming from a place of like, I want to do this, is not this is my job. This is like,
Yeah.
I love this club. I want to be part of this. I'm passionate about it. It's just, it's incredible. And they are so kind. I mean, they feel like we saved their club.
Uh,
Because I mean, I think financially we did save their club.
Yes.
We did. And so they're so gracious. And every time you go there, they're the most amazing hosts, and they love to share their culture. And I've learned so much about their culture to the point where I'm always joking around with them. One day I'm retiring in Innsbruck, Austria, and like we're still going to hang out because it really is people there. I mean, it thrives on tourism. People there are happy. It's absolutely stunning. It's beautiful there. And, you know, I think watching them go from, fifth to fourth to like we're in first place, unbeaten this year to go up to the
Huh.
third division. So, the coaches there are incredible, their families. I mean, I have this connection with the people there that is different than you have here. And I it's really hard to explain without like, actually being a part of it. But
Sure.
it is really a family culture there. And it's just, very rewarding in a different way than, what I've done in my past in the career.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
What do you think about just think about like these Premier League players like Messi, as I mean, obviously big example, but coming over and playing in MLS. Like what are your
I mean,
thoughts on that? I mean, or just that
obviously,
whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, obviously Messi coming to MLS was like right at the beginning of the Apple deal, was one of the
Right.
best things that we could have ever had happen. To be
Yes.
honest, I think we need more, to be honest. I mean,
Uh-huh.
we need more talent. I think the league is working really hard right now, like, I mean, all the time with owners to figure out how do we get to a point where there are more Messis here. I mean, Messi's a unicorn, so there's not
Right.
more Messis, to be honest, but,
Yeah.
more top tier quality players coming before they're 35 or 39, and they're like, at the end of like at the end of the road. Like, how do we get more young talent here so that the matchup can be this person versus Messi, not just Messi versus other teams. It's like other teams need to have quality players and talent too. Not that we don't. Like, I would say the MLS, game from, 10 years ago to today is wildly better, like
Hmm.
wildly. However, if you watch a Premier League game or, a Euro game or any of these like, high level, or even like some of the, Mexican teams or South American teams,
Yeah.
the quality is still better than ours, and that's obvious. And so I think we know we have work to do, and the changes have to be made, I think, in the salary cap. That's where it
Okay.
starts.
Okay.
I think there's work to be done in how you spend, how much you can spend, the rules and the guidelines. And it's tough. I mean, you've got legacy MLS teams, legacy owners who maybe aren't as excited about spending more money on players. And you've got all these young new owners. You've
Uh-huh.
got equity, venture capitalists now coming in who have the money, who want to spend it, who want to, be more like what the Moss brothers have done in Miami. So
Yeah.
there's sort of two sides of MLS a bit still, and there's some people in the middle there. But I think there's a lot going on there with like how do we get to the point where everybody's willing to put the chips in the bag and like really go for it here, especially with the World Cup coming,
Yes.
next now I can say next year, which is wild.
It's unbelievable. Yes.
It's crazy. And we've got Club World Cup coming this summer, which should be really exciting too.
Uh-huh.
So I think now is the time for our league to really elevate the players and the spend on the players. And I do think the financials come like we have to spend that, to get the viewership, to get the rating, to get all of that stuff to come. We have to spend the money to bring those players in because it's really important that people see talented players in MLS. Otherwise, they're going to continue to tune in on Saturday morning and watch Premier League. I
Yeah.
mean, we can't expect people to jump over to our league without having the talent to back it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I do think, like I said, it's gotten significantly better. And I think, if people that do watch the game and haven't watched the game, like you have somebody that show up who like, it's like, oh, I hadn't been to a game for X many years and I've been here now and like, this is totally different. I do think the game is better than it was, 10 years ago, but I still think it's not where it needs to be when you compare us to, you know, the big leagues,
Yeah.
Premier League, League
Yeah.
MX, like, things like that.
What about, and you mentioned this, and this was, I was going to ask this, when all this private equity venture capital money flowing into professional sports, but MLS as an example, what are your thoughts or kind of what do you think around that?
Yeah, I mean, I
That's
think
a huge trend.
it's a huge
Yeah.
trend, and I do think that it's going to change things because there are still a lot of teams, the family-run teams, I think you're gonna start seeing them go away because these families, I mean, between the state taxes, all the things you have to do to continue to keep a team
Yes.
and a family are so difficult. And you get to the point where you have all these kids, and I mean, you see it happen all over the place, and they're going to sell, I think, to these private equity firms, and then they're going to get more professionalized, is my opinion. I mean,
Uh-huh.
private equity people are coming in to make a return. So families don't see it that way. So families are in it, for millions of different reasons. Some of them are, like I'd argue, I'm sure like the Kraft family, I think, he's a business mind. His teams
Yeah.
always have been run that way. But I came from the Colts, like that, like Jim Irsay is not like running it necessarily to grow his value or make a profit. It's a passion, it's a love, it's a completely different thing. So how he runs the internal business there to me is very different than how it's run, even where I'm at now. I mean, our team is run by several private equity guys.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's their personal money, so it's not their firms. But
Yeah.
when you think about how they run it, it's very different than what I was used to when I was we were at a family business more, so to speak. So I believe to the good, I think on the business side, for me personally,
Hmm.
I actually prefer working in the more professional version of the sport versus like oh, it's like, we set a budget, but like we changed our mind, it's, not being disciplined, all those things where I could see all this opportunity if you had done it and run it more like a business and less like an emotional, like with your heart instead of with your brain. And so I think the private equity situation, I mean, some people again may not love it because some people got used to how sports were sort of run in the past, but I think the professionalized version of sports, bringing in those PEI guys are going to bring in, data strategy. If you don't have it, they're going to bring it in and
Uh-huh.
they're going to crunch the numbers and they're going to figure it out. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how that changes the sporting side too. The business side, for sure, I can see. Sporting side, it'll be interesting too. Like, are they willing to take as many risks on spin? I mean, because I think that's the glory of like, look at the Dodgers, like look how much money they have, look how much money
Right.
they have on sports, on players. Like it's
Yeah.
just like there is no limit. And
Yeah.
so will private equity guys do that? I don't know because there isn't always logic or numbers or data that tells you to do some of those things. So I'm curious to see how that like risk tolerance and player spend come in when you think about how private equity people make decisions.
Yeah.
So it'll all just be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier about just like changing culture in sports. How have you, how do you view culture and core values within an organization and how are you seeing it change in sports in general or in MLS or
Yeah. I
yeah.
think my opinion is when I first started, sports culture was driven by the sporting side. So like you sort of rode the wave of like winning and losing, and the coach and the GM like sort of created this they created the culture and we kind of you lived and died with it. And it wasn't like this intentional. I mean, like NFL teams didn't even have HR departments. So there were no like core values of our company. Like I don't even remember, like nobody talked about mission statements, like, vision statements. Like none of that was even discussed like when I was younger in sports. And that was not just where I was. That was like in a lot of places. It was like you're lucky to be here. You work for a sports team, like suck it up.
Uh-huh.
And I think now you're seeing people, I mean, here, I feel really fortunate. Our owners see it totally different. Like we just, 10 years in, refreshed our entire like vision, mission, values to really align. I mean, we went from, like I said, a domestic startup club to like owning just, the rights to an MLS club to building a stadium, having a team, having a couple international teams, hosting concerts, hosting, boxing events. So we do all these things now. And our values, like we're not really matching, in our mission statement for sure. What we did, it was all about soccer. And like what we do is still a lot about soccer,
Uh-huh.
but it's so much more. And I have so many people that work for me that couldn't relate to any of that. And I think young people really are looking for clubs and for companies who know who they are, who
Yes.
tell you who they are, who they can connect with that. And like what's important to you, Stacy? Like what kind of employees do you want to work here? And really being able to say, okay, at the end of the year, these were your goals, these are our values. This is how you achieved your goals or didn't achieve your goals. And this is how, you line up and stack up against our values and the people, whether that's, us being community focused or whatever. And so we just also like refreshed our full like volunteerism internally because, when you're running, like after I think post COVID, everyone was running to get back into buildings and get back up and running. And, there was all this demand penned up for concerts and, in-person events.
Yeah.
We did not lose like our volunteerism and community effort, but it did sort of get like pushed aside too much for my liking. So refreshing again our core values and mission reminded us all like how important that is to both external and internal facing, events and with our partners. And so we just like launched a whole new thing to start this year on, volunteerism and community impact and really rewarding people and recognizing people internally for what they do and what they give back. So I just think, you know, and we're also doing, coaching, executive coaching. If you
Okay.
would told me that a sports team would pay for executive coaching and leadership training 10 years ago, I would have probably laughed because they would have just been like, oh my God, we don't have to invest in people. We just hire the best people and that's that. And if they don't want to work here anymore, they move on. If they're not good anymore, we get rid of them. We don't like develop people. And really here, I'm trying to create something different. And LAFC has really been that voice since I got here of like, we're not just, we don't want to be the best culture for a football club. We don't have the best culture. We want to be like Netflix or whoever
Uh-huh.
you choose or Disney or, we shouldn't be striving to be the best of a traditionally bad culture system.
Right.
We should,
Right. Right.
we should be striving to be the best. And we are not there yet, but like we are constantly trying to evolve and, you know, bring in fresh perspectives and, you know, make an environment where people want to work. You're always going to have to work a lot in sports. Everyone's probably going to always get paid a little less. That's like part of it. You are going to work weekends and work events. I mean, there's things about sports, but there's all this joy and,
Mm.
other, external things that we can give to people and bring to people. And it's just reminding people of that, allowing people to have some time when others like the 2 week Christmas break, like some things
Uh-huh.
we do to try to create still a space where people want to be here for other reasons than just like I work for a sports team. Like they
Yeah.
actually like to work here. So, our goal is that every interaction with our club, both for an employee, a vendor, a partner, whatever, it like brings someone joy. So, I mean, that's what we're all about, uniting and bringing joy. That's like our mission statement, like pretty simply. And we spend, I think, a fair amount of time trying to figure out how we can do that better all the time for our employees, which again, like I said, is so different than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But I do think professionalizing sports, when you see that coming in, even like more HR, like more, more of a presence of HR is a good thing. Not just to deal with the bad things that used to happen in sports, but to really make sports teams, like a real company and a real business and actually giving them, a chance, like I said, for people to feel like they're valued, which just wasn't the case. I think for many people that worked in sports in the past, it was this whole you're lucky to be here idea,
Uh-huh.
which I really hate.
Yeah. How about for
So
you? Like, how's your personal definition of leadership? How's that evolved over time for you?
yeah, I think I am I like to say that I think I lead by example. Like I'm a person who likes to show that I'm there. But I also don't want to hover. I'm like very much like giving people the space that they need to grow and develop and be there, but also, you know, if you're like lost, I'm right here. And
Uh-huh.
if it's, if we're having a situation where it's like an all hands on deck, like I have no problem getting my hands dirty and showcasing that, I'm willing to do the work. Like we just kept having the same situation. And this is like a small example, but in our security issues sometimes that we have in a stadium, I'm showing up at the start of the match day and we're not having a person who's checking wristbands to get in our club lounges, which sounds like a minor thing. However, like when everybody's going in and eating our free food in our clubs, like it's a
Yeah.
problem, right?
Right.
So,
Yes.
so one day I decided that like I walked by and they were like, it's like, okay, the gates are opening 5 minutes, there's still nobody here. So I stood there and checked wristbands. Um, and then people saw me doing that. And it was like, oh, like shit, like we're never gonna let that happen again. And we're gonna fix this. And
Uh-huh.
it really fixed the problem. And it wasn't like I didn't yell at anybody. I didn't like, but it was just like leading by example. It's like, okay, what you need to know, like head of security, is if people showing up here and it's been a problem for all this time, you probably should step in and do it. I did it. I'm happy to do it. Like I've no problem. Like I, took 15 or 20 minutes. They did find someone to come do it and then we took
Uh-huh.
it over and it was all good. But just little things like that versus I'm a very kind, um, transparent person. I like people to know exactly where they stand. I would like to say that no one that works for me has any um hesitation about where they stand with me or where they stand with the company or where they might be able to go. I make no promises. I hate leaders who are like overpromise and underdeliver.
Mhm.
So I only promise and say things that I know I can make happen. So I'm really very true to my word. I try to have really high integrity. Integrity to me is like extremely important in leadership and in culture. That's, one of our main core values here, circles around integrity. And dialing in a level of integrity. I think people think of integrity as like you have it or you don't, but there's like this actual like integrity isn't like singular, you have it or you don't. It's truly like this lever. So, you know, you can be have high integrity or you can have low integrity and still have some, which again sounds weird, but I spent a ton of time with my executive coach on this because I think, I didn't appreciate the little things I was doing. Like I'm on the phone and my daughter's like, I need you. And I'm like 5 minutes. And like 30 minutes later, she's like, that's low integrity, Stacy. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
shit. Like, and like, and it's just like, and so what I've really focused a ton on with my team this year is the little like things that are just, it's like, duh. Like we should all know these things. We all know that they're right and wrong. But it's just like really focusing on all your words and being very intentional about them and making sure that if you're not going to make a deadline that you're telling people before it so you're giving people a heads up, making sure that you're not setting like you're setting expectations or agreements instead of expectations. So I was finding that people were disappointing me too much, and
Uh-huh.
it's like, oh, I have these expectations that I'm not verbalizing with anyone, nor am I asking them if they're reasonable. Like,
Mhm.
hey, like I wanted this yesterday and I didn't get it. And they're like, oh, I had no idea. And it's like, yeah, maybe I go back and I look at my emails. It's like, I guess I never said that. Like, how did that happen? So really trying to coach people and myself to be like very intentional and authentic and, like I said, open with my expectations versus just, I think a lot of leaders have this idea that like you're an executive. So because you're an executive, Kip, you know exactly what I'm thinking.
Right.
And that's not true. It's actually really not true at all. And so I think I've become very intentional with agreements and timelines and managing expectations so that you're not disappointing yourself or other people are not disappointed by you. Because if someone says to me now, oh, I really want to get this by then. I'm like, that's not reasonable. Like
Uh-huh.
this is what I think we should do, and this is what I can do. And if we can't do it, I'll tell you. Like I'll give you a heads up. So what I found is you really just gain such a high level of trust with people when you have that just constant communication. And again, it's so basic, but it's just lost in people a lot. And it's not because people are bad people, and it's not because they're smart. It's none of that. People are so busy and they have so much to do. Like you have to be clear about your intentions.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. How
Yeah.
about you talked a little bit about, I mean, a recruiter bringing you to LAFC. and thinking about like bringing people into sports organizations. Any particular approaches you have for attracting like high performance leaders into LAFC, or how you think about bringing high performance leaders into just sports teams?
Yeah.
With all the reasons you said, how a sports team's different than a normal business, quote unquote, as far as time and compensation, all those kind of things. How do you attract, high performance people?
Yeah, I think um interestingly, I think high performance people, even though, like I said, all those things like maybe are not as perfect as you want, high performance people are curious,
Uh-huh.
and I think sports is unique, and if you've never done it, you want to try it. And I do think sports, working for a sports team, is a bit like a drug. Like, I mean,
I'm sure it is.
you get the hit from, like, winning, and there's also the losing, but like winning is fun. It's so fun. And having that like dopamine attached to like something outside of your day-to-day work really is like brings an adrenaline to you, and I think an enthusiasm to the work. We have people, I mean, we just hired a new head of marketing. She came from Meta. Like, I know she took a huge pay cut, like lost
Uh-huh.
stock options, all these things. She came here though because she believed in our brand that we had built and really wants to take our brand to a new level using tools that like maybe sports teams haven't used in the past, because she's got this like toolkit and this background, this knowledge base that, people here don't have. So I think we were able to convince her that, this is a great culture. It's a fun place to work. So that makes it different. You kind of do, even though I think it should be professionalized more, it should never be corporate. Like, sports should
Hmm.
never feel corporate. So people who are really tired of that truly corporate nature, I think, can find some satisfaction here that you don't get, in like that very strict corporate culture where she's like, I'm like rating people and their bonuses are like percentage. We like we do better than what we used to do and that kind of stuff, but we are not like as stringent as like corporate, whether it's, I don't know, like public companies or even not private companies that are, run in a very strict nature. So I
Yeah.
think that's something that really bodes well for us. And again, you just can't discount, like I said, like the dopamine of like working for a sports team, or, being able to like go to concerts, or, having the ability to, I think, really bring your family in. If you ask my
Uh-huh.
family, like, I work a ton. Obviously, I mean, I
Uh-huh.
work tons, but it doesn't feel like work to me. I absolutely love what I do every single day, and I'm able to bring them into it because I think that's the culture we have created here too. Our owners, while they are private equity guys, a lot of them, they have families, and they're very family oriented, and they don't mind that like my 12-year-old son shows up with me with his friends for a game, and doesn't like necessarily around me the whole time, but like they know him, they talk to him. I mean, my son absolutely feels like he's part of my job, which
Yeah.
is which is how I'm able to like work so much and make him feel okay about it, because he actually feels this attachment to our club, like it's an extension like of our family. So my kids definitely feel that, and I like to do that. My kids are older. We have a lot of young people who work for us, have young kids. We
Okay.
encourage them to bring them around too. And I love to see my coworkers bringing their kids around and us getting to know them. And sometimes my kids getting to know their kids, which is even, which is so amazing. Like,
For
we're
sure.
a big family. So I think that's another really unique thing about sports culture, that you can bring your family into it. And that's not necessarily true if you work for a, you know, Meta, or, I don't know, some of these other companies, just, a pharmaceutical company or wherever it is, a investment bank. So I
Yeah.
think that's one way to attract leaders and dynamic people who wouldn't necessarily think, oh, I want to take a pay cut to go, work for a sports team.
Yeah.
But
So how would you describe the LAFC culture and your core values? Like what is the culture? What are the core values?
yeah, the culture, like I said, it is a lot about, in the world we live in today. We're going through all these values. You know, it's LA centric first.
Okay.
So this club was built for the community of Los Angeles, which is a very diverse culture, and full of people. No one is. I say this. I do have a couple friends who are from LA, but
Uh-huh.
mostly you meet people like no one's from LA. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's transported here from somewhere else. So it's this like melting pot of people. And LA tourism like had a slogan like everyone's welcome, like everyone belongs.
Uh-huh.
And we kind of took that, like, because we wanted to really have this LA centric culture. and thought, like, how do we do that? How do we make it so that when anyone who comes to our game, no matter if you're a fan of football or what you do or our building, everyone feels like they belong there. There's something there for them. They, want to come back. And I think one of the coolest things is, we have a support, our supporter culture. So you have all these supporters. And one of the groups, is the Pride Republic. And when you talk to some of the people that are there, I mean, I've been emotional about it sometimes because listening to them talk about never being at a sporting event or not attending sporting events because they felt like they weren't comfortable, like people didn't accept them and they like didn't know how to interact with people. And the fact that some of them come and are season ticket holders, have been season ticket holders for like 7 or 8 years
Uh-huh.
and tell you that they feel like it's like where they feel the most welcome now is
Mm.
in our building and our games with our fans. And if you think about all the other supporter groups in our entire fan base, like, outside of a game, I'm not sure what all their belief systems are. But
Right.
like what we've made very clear is that everyone in our stadium who is a fan of our club belongs there. And that is how people treat each other and that is how they behave. And that is truly, I think, how in that culture like came from inside first and infiltrated to like the external, fan base. And that is why I came here, a big part of it. Like we really know who we are and we're very true and authentic to ourselves. So we're not like floating in the wind, like with,
Uh-huh.
whether it's, social injustice stuff or, whatever political shit's going on. Like LAFC like was really clear about who they are. And when we post things, when we go out and do things, we're doing them because we believe in them. And it isn't like a fad or like it just,
Right.
it's cool to do it.
Yeah.
Same with, like giving back to the community. We've been very intentional about giving back to the community, like directly in Los Angeles where our building is. I mean, it's in a not, the most, easy neighborhood. And
Uh-huh.
we do a ton of stuff with people like right there in the city. And I mean, giving back, being a force, we call it being a force for good. Being a force for good is a huge part of both working internally and being a fan and all of it. It's community is at the core of what we do. So, I mean, if you think about our values, that is another core value. The other one that's very important is like really being innovative and being first. So we have a great chief technology officer, Christian Lau. He, since the beginning, has been like, we are going to be, first to market whenever we can. So, I think it's like so like yesterday, but I mean, we were the first club that had, only mobile tickets, no paper, no cash, like, and I think we're the first venue to do that again when we opened, which was several years ago now.
Uh-huh.
But we've tried to continue to do that. Like we're now, we have Intuit Dome, which is open, which is like, futuristic. I was just there last night for WWE and it was crazy. But like I mean, we're, doing our part to like keep up with that. And I think we're still, we have in, in MLS will still be the first for some facial recognition, where you can walk in and, get your beer and get your ticket and whatever and never take out your phone or do anything. Like just if as long as you sign up for technology. So we're trying to continue. I think we're trying to get as frictionless as possible for people and like be as tech forward as possible. And, whether that's how we find players or how we interact with fans or how we do everything, we put like innovation and data at the forefront of that. So that's also a value. And I think that's another way we probably attract, in my opinion, leaders. We have a great data strategy team. And nowadays, every leader knows you have to have good data to do your role. So, I mean, for us specifically, I think that's how we've been able to, attract some talented leaders, knowing that we are putting data at the forefront, whereas that's, not been true of sports teams in the past. So we're very data centric. We took our head revenue was a data analyst when he started here.
Huh.
So, and my boss, decided right during COVID, we were shifting things around. We had to let people go and all these things. He's like, what if we put Ryan Bashara, who at the time was heading up data strategy, into the head of revenue role and let him sell because we can't sell anything with him already. Like he's in every sales meeting, he's doing all the pitch decks, he knows the clients, he can speak the language. Like, what if we gave him a shot? And I was like, yeah, I think it's a great idea. And like our revenue has grown. I, I mean, I think like maybe 150% since we put him in.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a great decision. So I think we like to think that we don't do like same as last year. Like we've done it
Uh-huh.
before, we're going to keep doing it again. We're constantly, challenging ourselves to be better. And that's actually really unique for sports teams because I think a lot of sports teams it's like, oh, you should change your uniform. Oh no, like we couldn't possibly.
Yeah.
Or you should change your, song that the players run out to. Oh my God, we could never. It's always been like there's almost in a weird way, almost nothing sacred because like we were always challenging the norm and no one's response can ever be why are we doing that? Well, we just always done it that way, Stacey. Like everyone knows that is like not an acceptable answer to anyone.
Uh-huh.
So I think, some that makes, in my opinion, like that makes us pretty unique. Um,
Yeah. How about what any you kind of touched on this there a little bit, but like just future trends, opportunities, what are the things that you're most excited about? And then how has LAFC positioned themselves to take advantage there?
Yeah, I think for me right now, I mean, I could take this a million ways. I think what is the coolest thing that we have for us right now that, not everyone has because of where they sit. I mean, we have the World Cup coming in 2026 in Los
Yes.
Angeles, and then we have the Olympics coming in our building in 2028.
It's unbelievable.
And then, you take that, plus I think because of all those things, and Club World Cup, which I mean, is coming this summer.
Yeah.
So I think football, global football, is going to be at the forefront, here in America, which isn't always true. And so we have a huge opportunity to take advantage of as MLS, as LAFC, as a country to like really take the fandom and if you and really um the youth numbers of like who plays soccer are so high and we've never really been able to totally convert that into like fans watching MLS,
Uh-huh.
soccer. So I think we have a lot of work to do there and like this is a huge opportunity with it being so present here. I'm hoping that you're going to see, you know, kids and adults alike saying, "Oh, I'm watching, the World Cup and I'm watching, whatever country and there's three MLS players on. Oh, like I could go watch them in St. Louis or I could go watch them in LA or I could go watch them in Miami." And so I think we have to do a lot of storytelling over the next couple of years to
Sure.
showcase how many, national team players play in MLS because there's a lot. Every team has several and it's been like growing over the past, couple of years. So if we do it right, to me, there's a huge opportunity for us as a league and for us as a club to showcase, we are not your old MLS. Like we're new, we're different, and we have all these talented players. And oh, like you watch them play in the World Cup, now you can come watch them, every week in your own city, wherever you are. So I think that's a huge opportunity we can't miss. And again, for us for the Olympics, like showcasing our building in 2028 is going to be huge. We're not sure what sport we're getting yet, but I think if we get some of the ones they're talking about, it'd be pretty exciting. And just we can't like really monetize that much, but I do think we can take the opportunity to showcase the building that we have created and to
Yes.
get people in our building that have never been there before. And I do think we'll be able to take advantage of that so that, people like in the future think of us in a different way because they learn who we are from the Olympics. So I
Yeah.
think we have some cool opportunities just with like events that are happening, in Los Angeles that are just or in the country in the world that should make it really exciting. And then I think, when you think about technology, which we talked about a little bit, like I said, I was into it last night. When you see
Uh-huh.
how like arenas and stadiums are developing and changing, um, and creating this entertainment value that is just, somewhat next level. There's opportunity there too to see like how far we can take it and what we can do. I'm not like a wrestling fan, but I'm not gonna lie, I was so entertained last night. It was so
Uh-huh.
entertaining. They really put on a show, and because of all the features of that stadium that have been built in there with technology, whether it's lights and seats or the way they've done the infrastructure to be able to do like the thing like I mean they were like all kinds of like massive fireworks and stuff happening in there. I was like, I don't know
Really?
how they're oh yeah, like how they're like doing all of this right now. But like I said, it was like highly, highly entertaining. And so I think, and like, you have your phone, you're getting notification. I mean, it's all interactive. And, when I think about, I have a 12-year-old son, like who, if I let him be on his device, would be on it 24 hours a day.
Uh-huh.
He's so attached to that and how engaged he is, like how much more engaged he is if that is also part of what's going on around you. And so the things that people are doing, I think you're just going to see. sports entertainment like at the next level at some of these venues, which is gonna be cool to see.
Yeah. Did he go with you to WWE?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no, no. I was sort of working,
Okay.
but we're trying to see if one day we're always like trying to get different events in our building. So we
Sure.
love WWE in our building. So
Uh-huh.
building relationships and some of our owners, because we have a big ownership group, actually run um, WWE. So
Okay. Oh,
like we
cool.
were sort of there just at work, but it was spectacular.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
How about looking back, and this might be super obvious based on our conversation, but decision or action that you would say has been most pivotal in your success so far?
I would say, I mean, it definitely is leaving. It's definitely
Okay.
coming to the job. But I
Yeah.
would say within that, the part about that I try to never leave out, which I would have left out if you didn't ask, is that I was very clear when I got here about what I wanted one day. And I think a lot of women, especially, struggle with that sometimes. But I told my boss that one day I wanted his job. Not here necessarily, but
Uh-huh.
like, and he was like, whoa, like, whoa. I mean, and because I hadn't been here very long, he's like, I just hired you to be my CFO. Do you not want to do that? I'm like, no, no, no. Like, I want to do that. I want you to know that, like, I want to run a club one day, or a team or whatever. I mean, that's what I want to do. And I really have fallen in love with soccer. I won't lie. The culture of football is
Yeah.
really warm and welcoming and, familial, which I love. But I said to him, the one thing I've never really had the opportunity to do is sell. And
Okay.
so I was like, any opportunity you can expose me to, would be helpful. And he remembered that. And when we were doing naming rights, I was also helping because we didn't have a banking. We didn't have a banking partner. We didn't have naming rights. So those are two big things which ended up
Sure.
merging together. But like at the time, we didn't know that. So I was trying to sell a banking deal. And I was, working with several big banks and, couldn't quite get the number we wanted. And so we were still looking, looking, looking. And then he and I get in front of BMO, and sort of the rest is history. And he really, like, he and I mean, our sales team and our data team helped us time, but like we really got that deal off the ground. And then fast forward to this year, selling the front of kit, like I was like the pivotal person in getting
Yeah.
the going. And so
That's
the
cool.
the
Very cool.
opportunity, yeah, the opportunity to do that. And when, it's funny when I had at one point, I think after about a year of being the CFO, he was like, I want to bring you in stadium operations, like let you help with Angel City, do all these things, because I want to give you more. And I think operations is something you've never really been exposed to. So like, let's think about that. And that was when I was like, yeah, I'd also really love revenue. And he's like, you don't have any experience. We talked about this. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then when I helped, sell the BMO deal and was sitting in a room with our owners and the CEO and, the people who worked the deal, and they like turned to me and they're like, you have this amazing person like who sold this deal. Like like we want to give her credit. You should know. And I about like fell out of my chair and crawled under it and hid. But I was like, okay. And then, 2 or 3 weeks later, my boss was like, I want to make you the COO and I want you to have revenue. And I was like, wait, what? But that was all because I asked for it at some level, because he knew I wanted that. I think if I had never been so bold and forward about that, not that it would have never come, it may have come naturally, but it wouldn't have come as fast as it did for
Sure.
sure. So that
That's
was, I
very
mean,
good.
to me, I think that's something I tell young people all the time, now too, that work for me, is you have to tell people and ask people what you want. It doesn't mean you're going to get it. Like, so don't be disappointed about when it happens or how it happens. And I think I was sitting in the right place at the right time for it to happen pretty quickly. But, if no one knows what you want, it's gonna be hard to get it. It's just like, it's really, you could fall into great things, but for the most part, you have to tell people and be very intentional about what you want and where you want to go. Or people make assumptions. Like I make assumptions that you want to stay in the path that you're in.
Uh-huh.
And that may not be what you want. So nobody
And
knows what you want. Nobody cares about what you want more than
right.
you.
Yeah. And people want, I mean, good leaders want to help you achieve what you want to achieve. If it's reasonable and it makes sense.
Oh,
Like
there is
you have to tell
nothing.
them.
Yes, there's
Right.
nothing better. Like I tell my
Yes.
executive coach all the time, I want to be a leader that develops leaders. Like
Yes.
I want to develop other people to take jobs away from me. Like that is my
Uh-huh.
job. Like in my opinion, I am if I am good at my job, the future is bright for us because I mean, I would love for like LAFC to be like this talent hub where it's like, oh, I hired somebody from LAFC because I found out those people are great. They train them well over there. They like, they're good employees, they're smart, they like, they know how to develop culture, they know how to lead, like all these things. Like love that. Because we can't, this is a problem with sports team. It's a problem and an opportunity. There's not an unlimited amount of jobs and promotions. Like
Right.
small organization at the end of the day, and I can't offer them like a transfer to Europe. Like maybe not, maybe soon, maybe one day I
Uh-huh.
can. Right now, no, though. So right now, like when I have like my best ticket salesperson, I have to know that like unless my head of ticketing is going, which he's young and he's hopefully, really hope he's not, like then I need someone else somewhere else, for he or she to go. Like and I need to be we all need to be proud of that. We need to not think of it as turnover. We need to think of it as like we are really doing our job well. If we are developing, our like highest performing ticket salesperson into the next leader of another organization. That's okay sometimes. I mean, it
Yeah.
sucks. It totally sucks.
Uh-huh.
But you have to see the other side of it, which is like I don't want people to sit here forever. And that actually isn't good for culture either.
Right.
So it's really, I mean, this is where people you don't want to have turnover like that's, unnecessary, but like there's such a thing as good turnover. Like you want to turn. Like otherwise you have this stagnant culture and if people aren't developing and growing, that is not good.
Yeah.
So
And if you can launch great leaders into the world, into other organizations, I mean, who knows what benefits will come from that? And maybe they at some point circle back around and come back to you and
we've
bring
had
a whole
several
host
people
of
come
things.
back,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
In this short like career that like LAFC has had, we have several good boomerang stories of people who have come back. And we also have some great stories of people who came in ticket sales, left to be the equipment manager, and then now are doing player development in another club. Like
Uh-huh.
this whole path of like what they never thought was possible.
Yeah.
Um, and then we have the more traditional ones where it's like ticket sales to sponsorship sales and, ticket sales to data strategy to marketing, all these things where people, I can't tell people where the opportunity is going to come. But if you're curious and you work hard and you tell
Hmm.
me like what you're interested in, one day it could happen. But
Yeah.
again, you kind of have to advocate for yourself, which is hard.
Right. How about any advice you'd give to people aspiring to get into the sports business, whether it's young people coming up or people just in traditional businesses that want to get
Yeah,
into
for
professional
sure.
sports?
I think I would say it's hard. I mean, this is where it's hard to get in sports. I know that. I mean, there's just not as many roles as there are, other industries. And I would say for people to be open-minded about not starting necessarily or like not being so, "Yeah, I have to start in sports." Like there are places you can go. I mean, actually, I mean, if you're a finance or accounting person, almost everyone I hire is from public accounting.
Sure.
So, like, or another sports team, but like public accounting is a huge hub for talent. So don't be discouraged by saying, I don't want to do that. Like, no, be smart. Go find out which public accounting firms, work with sports teams. Go
Right.
and then demand to be on the sports engagement and do it that way. So I would say don't be so highly focused on like it has to start in sport with like for college kids especially. I tell them this, it has to start like you have to start in ticket sales or I have to start as a community manager or whatever it is. I don't think that's true. Like I think sometimes you're better off to go to an agency or, do something else and then come into sports because I think it's really hard to come into sports with no experience. Like that's really difficult. And the other thing I would say is that, never say no to an opportunity. And,
Hmm.
networking is key. And I didn't really even know what that meant when I was younger. And I try to coach people on that. It's not just like networking and like getting a big LinkedIn. It's like making real connections with people. So like if you are interested and curious about, I mean, golf, like find someone like at like, the LPGA or PGA, find someone who does what you want to do one day. And people like me, I mean, I get like random LinkedIn stuff. I respond to it. Like,
Uh-huh.
so I think people are like, oh, those people are, and I can't respond to all of them, but like the ones that like resonate with me. So if you like have done your homework and you like have a story and you're like, I want 30 minutes, and I have this, here's questions, or sometimes I can, if you, as I tell them, send me the questions, I'll respond, but like try to create a genuine connection with people and then stay connected. Because
Yes.
people who do that are impressive to me. Like the young people who come to me and are like, I'm curious, I have a question, and I give them 30 minutes. And then like they circle back 6 months later and they're like, I got this job and I have this question.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, wow, like this person actually cares. And like they are smart and I can see what they're doing. And then, one day like I'm like, oh, this job opened, and I send it to them, and then they get
Uh-huh.
it, and like that's how it works. So I think not just networking, just to like know as many people as possible, like making a few real genuine connections can be very meaningful to your career in the future, I think.
Oh, very, very good advice. How about
Yeah.
last two questions? Legacy. How are you, and even if you're thinking about it, how are you thinking about building like lasting legacy through the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so I think spend a lot of time I've spent a lot of time in the last 2 years with this question because I think before I hadn't really thought about it a ton, to be honest. But as I get older, which is probably normal, I have two, daughters who are growing up, getting older.
Sure.
I'm watching that and I'm thinking about, this idea of like, what do I want people to remember me by? And I think for me, being a female in sports at the beginning and how hard that was for me, I have a real goal that like that doesn't have that's not the reality for women, 10 years from now, 20 I wish
Sure.
it was sooner, but like it's probably a little farther. But like I want it to be where there isn't this like, oh, like it's so hard to be in women's sports and we're still giving sports awards specifically for women because it's hard. Like I want I want to be part of the movement that makes it so that we're just not talking about women in sports
Right, right.
and like we're not talking about women's sports versus men's sports. Like we're just talking about sports and like
Hmm.
people work in it and it's women, men, like doesn't matter. And I want to be part of that. And so I have again, but I feel very fortunate to work for the person I work for, Larry Friedman, and then like our ownership group, which is also great. They give me the freedom to do things that I want. Like I won an SBJ award, which was like, a women's specific award last year. And my boss was like, all right, so who do you want to take with you to the table? Like, we're going to buy a table. And I was like, this might sound like it was in New York. So, like, you have to fly across the country, whatever. I'm like, this might sound crazy, but I would actually like to take all the women that are directors and above, like, which is not actually
Very
not,
cool.
unfortunately, not a huge population, but like,
Uh-huh.
it's still way bigger than what we were originally thinking and willing to pay for.
Yeah.
I'm like, because it like had, the awards event, but also had like a day, like a leadership day before it where you like listen to speakers and then we could have a dinner. And I'm like, this is a group of women who all work together, but don't really work in the same groups. Like we have some at stadium, same, some here, some there. And I feel like that single solitary moment, and you could ask the women that came, like it was such like an incredible 2-day experience for us. There were people who had never been to New York. There were people who had never been to events like this. And then there were a bunch of people who, sometimes like I think the problem is like in sports for women, it was like there's only so many roles. So women sometimes get competitive with each other.
Sure,
Um,
absolutely.
and it sort of broke the walls down for that, which I really loved. And it created, friendships for some people who like didn't even really know each other. And
Uh-huh.
definitely better collaboration within the team. And it's like, oh, I used to think she was really difficult because I only worked with her once a year and it was on this project that was like hard. And then I sat by her dinner and like she's a human. And like,
Yes,
I learned
yes.
about her and it was very impactful. And so from that, I was like, we have to do more. Like we have to continue to do more here. So I have chosen, this started like 6 months ago, two of our young female leaders to like revitalize like our LAFC ladies group,
Okay.
where, we did some surveys. It's like, what do the women in the office like want to do together? And again, these are all small things, but I really think just bringing women together gives them like a group of people to talk to, who maybe go through similar things, maybe don't, and, just provides I mean, I think community mostly for them, and I think it's been very again so far. It's new and we're working through it, but I am excited about it. But that's the kind of things I want to do is I just want to continue to develop women. I want to coach women to not be afraid to take the risk, to not be afraid to ask for what they want. Because I think that was really hard. Like I said, that was really hard for me when I was younger, and I, you know, probably sat in a job for longer than I needed to because I didn't do that when I was younger. So if I can coach these young ladies to speak up for themselves, to speak in rooms, to share their opinions, share their voices, that is a huge part of what I want my legacy to be is that like, wow, Stacy really helped. I carried other women with me. I didn't just like climb alone. Like I just
Uh-huh.
kept carrying them because that's what I want. That's what I really want. So, and I do think, you know, one day I'd like to work for a women's club too.
Mm.
Maybe not today, maybe, I don't know. But um, being a woman who's always worked for men's sports teams, mostly always worked for male owners,
Uh-huh.
love a lot of them. Um, but working for women with women for a women's sports team, it it's on the list for me one day.
Very cool.
So
Excellent.
yeah.
All right, last question. Success. What is your, and you can take this any direction you want. What is your personal definition of success?
Wow, that's like a really, it's funny, that's a hard question. Um, yeah, I mean, everyone's definition of success is different, but for me, as I've gotten older, success is happiness for me a lot. It's not about money, it's not about titles. It's truly about waking up in the morning and wanting to get up and do what I do. And I feel like as long as every day that's what's happening, I'm successful and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And the day that that changes, I need to do something different because I'm no longer successful at what I'm doing. So again, that's pretty simple, but I
Uh-huh.
really do think if you ask my family, especially my daughters, just because at the ages that they are, they're much
Sure.
more open with me about how, how they see me.
Uh-huh.
One of the best things that they've said to me in the last couple of years is, "Mom, you seem so happy now."
Oh,
And
that's
and I think
great.
me being happy makes me a better mom, makes me a better, employee, it makes me a better human. And them seeing that, success is happiness and it's not about money and it's not about, all titles and it's not about material things. It's not about any of that. It's about, loving what you do every day and how important that is. So, I mean, I think that is, I hope, what allows my kids to all do whatever it is they want to do and define success in whatever way they want to define success. Like I tell them that all the time. I don't define your success. So,
Hmm.
you think straight A's is successful, great. If you think B's are successful, great. Like share that with me. I have like some expectation of what failure might be for you,
Uh-huh.
but honestly, I can't define it. Like at your, you get to an age where you have to define what success is, and I don't get to decide that for you anymore.
Oh,
Uh,
that's perfect.
yeah, so it's to me, it's success is very unique for every person, but for me, it's all about, doing what makes you happy and doing what you love, which again is sort of simple. And I'm sure people are like, oh, but you have this nice title and have all these things. That, really just it's nice to have, of course. But it's not what makes me happy every day.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic, Stacy. So thank you very much.
Of
Like,
course. No, this has been great. Thank you for having me. It's always like fun to reflect and talk about, life.
no, absolutely. And we will share in the show notes like all your socials and LAFC and everything so people can get a hold and follow the team and
Yeah,
see
they
what's
should
going to come
definitely
with
do that.
World Cup there. Yes. But thank you.
Yes.
This has been an absolute pleasure and I'm
Same.
honored that you came on the show. So thank you very, very much.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.